Good morning. This is Michael Collins of the Cumberland County Historical Society Gardner Oral History Project. Today we're interviewing, it's June the 17th, 2015, and it's around 10 o'clock in the morning. This morning we're interviewing Mr. Newton Robbins. Mr. Robbins, can you give us your age, your date of birth, and your current address, sir?
Yes, my age is 87 and my date of birth is September the 24th, 1927. And I live at 7 Robert Lane, Carlisle, Pennsylvania since, we moved there in 1976.
So you're a longtime resident of
Oh, yeah.
Carlisle, Cumberland County. I understood that you're originally from Milton.
That's correct.
And Milton is in what county, sir?
Northumberland.
Northumberland. So you're pretty much a neighbor anyway.
Oh, yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about Milton during that period of time? Growing up, did you grow up in the town or on a farm, or, a little bit about your family history?
Well, actually, my mother was divorced from my father when I was 3 and my brother was 5.
Okay.
And after the divorce, she moved to her parents' farm, RD1, Milton, Pennsylvania, out Chillisquaque. But at any rate, I was there until I was 17 years old. And the war was going on, and I wanted to do my duty to the country, and I went through to the Navy officials, and they said you needed to get your mother's appointment because you're only 17 years old. So, at any rate, I went into the Navy in June or July of 1945. And where do you want to go from there?
Well, what type of specialty did you have? What did you do for the Navy after you were inducted and had finished boot camp? What did they train you to do?
They trained me to go to Platoon Leaders School. And I just happened to have a picture of the graduation ceremony of the platoon leaders. And I want you to note the date on that photo.
September 22nd, 1945.
Okay. And the guy with the dot on above his head is me.
All right. Can you hold that up to the camera?
Sure.
And possibly, here, I noticed you've got another frame there. Possibly, I can hold this up if you can point. Which individual are you there, sir? You said...
It's got a dot above it, but I can't
Hold
see it
on
up
here.
Oh,
Oh, there you are.
find it?
Yep. You're right here
Right.
in the back row. And you got this real faint dot there. And that's Platoon Leaders School, class of September 22nd, 1945, U.S. Naval Training Center in Bainbridge, Maryland.
Bainbridge, Maryland.
So they didn't send you to Great Lakes. You didn't have to go too far from home, did
Well,
you?
I was lucky. I caught a train. Mother saw me to the station, and it took me down to the closest station,
Uh-huh.
and the bus picked us up and took us over to the NTS Naval Training Center.
Okay.
And I went through boot camp, and in boot camp they had a platoon leader, which was normally a chief.
Right. Petty officer.
Chief petty officer. And then his second in command, the guy who did all the work, was me.
All right. And you were what at that point? A seaman what class?
I was a seaman second class.
Second class.
That's correct.
Which would have been the equivalent, I guess, to private first class in the Army at that point.
I guess that's what you're
All right.
thinking.
So what'd you do? Herd recruits around during your time?
Actually, this picture that you just observed,
Right.
was a graduation, and it was, the date on it was the day before I was 17 years old, the day before I became 18, and
Yeah,
I
I
had
noticed.
already gone through the training program.
Quite an accomplishment. Did you, in the course of the time you were in the Navy, I noticed September, I think the war was winding up pretty much by the time you graduated from leadership school.
Yes, sir.
And did you receive any sea duty during your time in the service?
No sea duty, only ship duty.
Ship duty. Right.
Ship duty. Well, first of all, as a assistant, not troop, but assistant platoon commander, the chief very, very seldom showed up.
Okay.
And this was when the responsibility was on the assistant. And I actually had two platoons, platoons, actually, after they graduated. It was the same, my position was the same as a drill sergeant in the Marines.
Okay.
And you taught them to be a sailor.
Right.
Needless to say, after about 2 platoons, I got tired of it, and I requested sea duty. And they said, okay, we'll send you down to, or send you up, well, whichever way it was, to Boston Navy Yard.
Okay.
And Boston Navy Yard, I picked up the USS Washington, the BB-56. That's one of the big class battleships.
Okay.
Right away, I got lost. The ship was that big, and they finally put us down into the actually big room. And needless to say, we were there exactly, and I was on that ship for the period of 1 day.
1 day.
1 day, because they transferred us over to the outgoing unit in Boston Navy Yard.
Okay.
And I was there for several weeks doing KP duty until I got my next assignment, thinking I would be getting sea duty. And they sent me down to Green Cove Springs, Florida, where I reported on board the USS Parks DE Destroyer Escort 165. My job was to help mothball the fleet, and that was the purpose of the assignment. It was a mothball on all these destroyer escorts, and they were lined up down there by the hundreds, literally.
I can
Literally. The river took, at any rate, we finished the mothballing the parks, and then we got another assignment. We got assigned to the USS Levy. Guess where it was? Right next door. So we moved all our equipment next door. And that reminds me of a little story, too.
Okay.
Once a month, we had a insect removal, and the insect was roaches. And you had to put all your gear forward on the ship, and then they would fumigate the aft section, and then you moved all your gear back, and they would fumigate the forward section of the ship. So at any rate, we finished. I'm not sure of this. I think we finished mothballing the USS Levy. The war was had been over, and they had all these ships and all kinds of equipment that they had to make a decision on. That's why they mothballed them in Green Cove Springs, because the river, St. John's River, incidentally, was deep, and it did the job. But then they discharged me at the convenience of the government. Since I was United States, in the interim, I was promoted to Seaman First Class.
Mm-hmm.
And they discharged me, guess where? Back, and sent me back to Bainbridge, where I
Okay.
was discharged. Honorable discharge.
I would imagine. I'm curious, when you say you mothball a ship, is that like drain fluids and just get it ready to shelve pretty much? Take care of
My job was to chip and paint. And I think I painted both DEs. It seemed like
both
that.
destroyer escorts.
I still have a scar on my leg from one of the actions. One of the sanders that got loose and cut me. I had a little bit of damage.
You gotcha. No Purple Heart for that one, though.
No.
I noticed you have a very long involvement with the Civil Air Patrol, starting in 1942.
In 1942, that's correct.
So you were what, spotter? Were you doing spotter work? Or?
I did that. I also did. I started flying in January of '44. I started I drove I didn't have a driver's license. I had to use a bicycle to get to the airport. And the Bucknell University had a V-12 program there, which was a Navy program for potential flyers. And they didn't have to, but they were assigned to give these kids 25 hours of flying time before they put them into basic training. So at any rate, where am I? That's another problem.
We're talking about Civil Air Patrol and you getting the
Okay.
flight training that the Navy was offering.
I have a membership card here from the Civil Air Patrol. I think it's rather quaint because it's a picture of me in 1942.
Oh, aren't you sharp? You got that, Blair?
And turn it on over.
And so you were under the guise of the U.S. Army then with that, the Civil Air Patrol.
No, actually, it says on there U.S. Army, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got Army in red on it. So.
Yeah.
You got your head at that Johnny angle. You look pretty proud.
Yeah, I was.
So you started flying at what, 16?
16. And funny part about that, when I took my flight test for the private license, a fellow by the name of, just dropped it. I just dropped it. At any rate, there were certain things that you had to do.
Mm-hmm.
You had to do a spot landing, one with a full forward slip, and then you had to do specific maneuvers in the air. He put up the flags that you were supposed to land between. He says, you go ahead, I'll put up the flags and fly the pattern and do your spot landings and so forth. So I was downwind. I applied carburetor heat, and the engine stopped. Well, I had a glider.
Yeah.
And I had to do some fast thinking, and I was still 16.
Okay.
One of the two. But at any rate, I come in high, I give it a full forward slip, and kicked it out I landed between the flags.
You got it. You hit your mark.
I
nailed it.
So to speak.
With all those problems.
Yeah.
I guess you were pretty proud, weren't you?
Oh, hey, that wasn't the half of it. The examiner said, Harry Neidig is his name. He said, Newt, or Ned, they called me Ned. What's wrong? I said, well, the engine stopped. He said, yeah, but what did you do? I said, prayed.
Yeah, I would have too.
Yeah.
I certainly would have too.
He says, well, let's take it up and see if it'll do it again. Well, we started, but we didn't have starters in those old days. It was a J3 Cub.
Okay.
So we propped it. And
Prop meaning you go out and you turn
Right,
the propeller on the
right,
front.
right. So he took me up, and we had to do precision spins in the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, give me a 3-turn spin to the left. So I'm counting 1, 2, anticipate the recovery, 3. And he said, what was that? I said, 3-turn spin to the left. He says, no, it wasn't. I said, what was it? He says, it was a 2 3/4 turn. Oh, I flunked. So let me see you do it again. Boy, I nailed that one too.
You got that one too.
Yeah, so we did a lot of other stuff and precision work. We did more precision work than they do today, really.
Really?
Right. But went back and landed, and he said, congratulations, you passed.
All right. So you had your solo pilot's license at that
I
point.
had my private license, private pilot's license. Yeah.
Now, what type of work did you do, duty assignments did you get with the Civil Air Patrol?
Okay, they trained you to do a number of things, aircraft identification, ship identification,
Okay.
and in addition, there was manual of arms, Morse code, a lot of leadership, so forth and so on, and which that leadership carried through my whole career to this day.
Yeah.
And needless to say, I was doing some observer work in the aircraft when we were doing domestic assignments during the war.
Right.
And we would pick up blood and move from point A to point B, courier service,
Right.
stuff like that.
Well, I know that the Civil Air Patrol has a long and proud history, and I think during the Second World War, the patrol was responsible for sinking a couple of ships or a submarine or
Two
something.
subs.
Two subs that
Two subs.
that Cap managed to get.
That's right.
And,
100-pound bombs
uh,
slung under the wings.
and just popped them and got them both.
Yeah. Yeah. But we spotted a number of aircraft, or rather of subs, and all that data is documented.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it in a magazine called The Volunteer, and it listed all the stats during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had 12 different locations along the East Coast that we had members who donated their airplanes, their time, their flying, and so forth and so on. Never cost the government a dime. And needless to say, a German sub-commander after the war was interviewed. And they were really sinking ships at that time, which was early in the war.
Right.
And they made it bad as far as the convoys are concerned. And they said, well, why did you stop? He says, well, actually, it stopped because of those little yellow and blue airplanes. They said they sunk a couple and we got out of there.
And that was Civil Air Patrol.
That was Civil Air Patrol.
Well, I know it's a very honored service, and to this day, I think you were involved till 1986.
Correct.
So that's what, 44 years of active service with Civil Air Patrol.
Well, actually, it wove into what I did every time. I was a trooper, a state police trooper,
Right.
and yesterday was the 17th, or is this today the 18th?
Today's the 17th.
Today's the 17th.
Yes.
69 years ago, I joined the state police. And needless to say, every assignment which I think I give Richard
Okay.
Tritt,
Right.
and every assignment location that I went through, I had it all documented, the dates and so forth and so on.
Right.
I used when I went to the station, if there was an airport located there, I talked to the airport FBO
Mm-hmm.
and got permission to use one of his airplanes if we had any major cases. Well, we had a lot of major cases. We had bank robberies and prison breaks and missing people and homicides and so forth and so on.
Right.
And I got to fly. I can tell you a story about one.
Certainly.
There was a bank robbery in Carlisle, Pennsylvania,
Right here.
right here. And I was assigned at the time to Lewistown Station. And we were be on the lookout for this particular truck.
Okay.
And a buddy and I were on patrol. And sure enough, here come at any rate, the truck was located, and they abandoned it in Stroh's Mills, which is just west of Lewistown.
Okay.
And we had a local riding group and when they abandoned it, it was in a wooded section, but there were roads all around it. And this actual horse club, they were patrolling the outer perimeter in addition to our own people.
So they were working as a mounted posse for
That's
you
right.
at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I get a kick out of this one. I said to the sergeant, I said, do you think I could go to the airport and do a spot check from the air? He says, get going, kid.
Yeah.
And an old sergeant,
Yeah.
gruff. And we went out to the airport, took off, went over to Stroh's Mills. And we were flying us around the perimeter. And I looked down, and on the adjacent, on the edge of the woods, I saw these two guys standing. And there were two guys we were looking for. And I said, I'll bet you that's them. What are we going to do? I said, well, let me look around. I look around, right adjacent to the woods, there is a field, flat. And I said, we can land and arrest them. I landed, we got out of and of course we were in uniform.
Right.
These guys put up their hands. So we got them.
So it wasn't no going back and telling somebody. You took it your own initiative. Let's go get them now while they're available.
Yeah.
That is a story. Not to digress, but to go back to the Civil Air Patrol. I understand all of you for your wartime service received a Congressional Gold Medal.
Correct.
And I guess that was a proud moment.
Yes, it was.
In recognition of your service. Now, I understand you also went to Roosevelt Aviation School.
Correct.
All right. When was that? Was that on the GI Bill?
That was under the GI Bill, as well as my flying time to get my license.
Okay.
So it was under the GI Bill.
All right. Did you?
Roosevelt, I graduated from in 1948 as an aircraft and engine mechanic. Only
Okay.
after I had to pass the necessary paperwork and job description.
Well, I would imagine that's a pretty critical job when you're doing mechanical work and so forth on the planes. What led you to become a state policeman, state trooper?
Well, my uncle was a superintendent of a coal stripping job out in western Pennsylvania, Brady's Bend and Katanning area, and they had two airplanes. It was the Troy and Beer Coal Company. They had a Cessna UC-78. That's a twin-engine World War II trainer. And they also had a Ryan Aviation. Well, me with my fresh A&P license, and my uncle being the superintendent, of course.
Yeah, that helps.
That helped a lot to get me the job. And at any rate, I was taking care of the airplanes and making good money and so forth. And all of a sudden, we had a downturn in the economy. And the first thing that went was the aviation division. And more on that in the state police. But at any rate, we sold the airplanes, and incidentally, we picked up the one airplane, the Ryan Aviation, at Reading,
Okay.
where I got the gold medal. Yeah,
Yeah.
and many, many times in and out of their practice and instrument approaches.
Well, that's still an active airport over there. And,
Oh, yes.
I know they have a lot of the older planes come in June. I think they just had their big weekend
That's
fly
right.
in with their World War II vintage, including bombers and so
They
forth.
had, speaking of bombers, they had the B-29 four-engine, dropped the A-bomb,
Yeah,
called Fifi.
Fifi. Yeah.
And they had it there, and it was operational, and they flew it during the show.
So you attended that?
No, I did not.
But
but
have you
I-
been to it before?
Yes,
Yeah, I have too. It's quite interesting.
yes.
You entered the state police in 1949, so
Correct.
you have to have state police training. What was that all about with the Pennsylvania State Police? Was it kind of like going back to boot camp?
Very, very much so, and needless to say, I prepared for it, and running, so forth and so on,
Right.
and shooting, and I was a hunter and a fisherman and so forth and so on. Pretty good shot, too.
Okay.
And at that time, the academy was located at Hershey, where it is today,
Right.
and it was called a training school.
Okay.
And I figured, well, at any rate, I found out that the academy was I think they had another class in there or something. But at any rate, I was assigned to 21st and Her Street, which was troop headquarters for Troop H, Harrisburg. And that was a 3-month training period. We were on the 3rd floor of the brick building, which was headquarters.
Okay.
And needless to say, here we go again.
Now, weapons training. You all were carrying like the .38 service revolver? Was that
That
the
is
issue
correct.
sidearm?
That 38 special.
And at that point, you were probably still training on the Thompson machine guns. and
Yeah.
Regular gangbuster stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Now, you initially go to, you mentioned flying and for the state police, even to in an incident where you apprehended 2 felons. That's quite innovative. That's quite groundbreaking at that period of time.
We didn't even have an aviation division.
So I mean, you're flying what, private plane, somebody's private plane,
Right.
and
right,
using it for state work.
Right,
And I
right.
mean, that's just not something you hear about in the
Right.
late 40s, early
It was the
50s.
same way with the scuba diving, too.
Okay.
The scuba diving, I was an open water PADI diver, and
Okay.
we didn't have any facilities until I got there at Troop Duty D. Butler.
Right.
And we had a couple of drownings, and Kathy Shea murder, rather missing person. We never did locate her,
Right.
but we searched quarries and so forth and so on.
Body recovery.
Yeah, and I personally, I've picked up, or rather recovered stolen cars and stuff
Okay.
like that, even before there was a scuba division.
Yeah. So you're getting out there, and you had the support, I guess, of your superiors.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
that's quite aggressive.
We made our own diving suits, where today you can pick them up for a couple $100.
Right.
But we cut the forms and so forth and so on. We had our own compressor,
Uh-huh.
and we.
Were you using military surplus initially, or?
Well, it was my buddy's compressor,
Uh-huh.
and that's when I was living in Bedford, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But that's
Was
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I guess so. Was your main duty though patrol initially?
Initially it was patrol,
Okay.
right, and I was assigned to McConnellsburg Station as patrol.
Right.
I was assigned there. Secondly, after I got promoted to corporal,
Right.
after 15 years or so, I went back there as assistant station commander.
Okay.
And also I was assigned to Lewistown as patrol.
All right.
And that's where I got the bank robbers.
That's where you got the bank robbers.
Yeah.
What was the response to that capture of these bank robbers? Did you get
I have in my files a picture. Well, that was a homicide. Now, yes, by golly, I do. I have a picture of that. After we picked up, that was a Dermenzen murder case. You know, there's
Well,
too
these
much.
guys that you did, I'm sure there's so many, you know, and that was a pretty rowdy period of time too, following the war,
Yes.
as I understand. You know, how did you get? You didn't have radios in your plane, did you?
No.
So after you apprehend these guys, was there room to pile them in the plane with you, or did you walk out and find somebody to take
I
them?
took the plane back to the airport and thanked the operator.
Okay. Well, I would have been very pleased with myself at that point if I'd have pulled something like that off, you know.
They had pictures in the paper, but not of the plane. They had
Right.
of the operation and these guys in handcuffs.
And gave you a write-up of how they were spotted and captured, I'm sure.
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Well, you served with the state police till 1981.
December the 30th, 1981.
So you had a long career with them also.
32 years, 6 months, and 14 days.
There you go. And during this time, you're still involved with the
Oh, yeah.
Civil Air Patrol.
Yes.
And I understand in 1985, you started, you're here, you stated earlier that you came here, you and your wife came here in 1976.
That's correct.
All
I
right.
came here in 75. I was promoted to captain,
Okay,
and I was living, I had just finished all the patrol, crime, and staff positions
okay,
at Butler, which was Troop D headquarters.
okay,
And I got promoted to captain and sent to the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
okay,
But I commuted for a year, and then we moved to Carlisle in 1976.
okay.
76.
So I understand that, okay, you retired from state police in 1981, and in 1985 you founded the Crime Stoppers program here. Can
That's
you tell me a
correct.
bit about that?
That was under retirement. I was a member of the Exchange Club, and I still am today.
Mm-hmm.
And they made me an assignment for crime prevention. So I was trying to figure out something, and I came across out in Texas they had started this program. At any rate, I started and founded the Carlisle Area Crime Stoppers program. And I was looking for a board of people,
Mhm.
dedicated people.
Right.
And I, to this day, recruited, I think we had 12 or 15 directors. Not that many, maybe 12. At any rate, prominent people who wanted to volunteer and serve in that position.
Right.
And I had asked for volunteers. I had no problem at all
Oh,
filling
great.
the board.
And that program is still active today.
I got a comment on that. The first case that we had was an armed robbery down on the West Shore. And I used to know the names of these people, but I can't keep it in my limited memory bank.
Okay.
But at any rate, the first case was an armed robbery, a McGarvey service station in the town above Camp Hill. At any rate, these guys held up the attendant. This was late at night.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow or another they blew the guy's head off with a shotgun.
Okay.
I think it was a shotgun.
And this is in the early 80s. This is
Yes.
okay.
Well, I don't know. This has been a crime stopper program,
Right.
which I headed.
Right. So
That's
this
pretty-
is after 1985 then, when you founded the Crime
Yes,
Stoppers.
that's correct.
Okay.
1985 it was founded.
Okay.
And it was also the following year they had asked me to start the state program.
Oh,
And
okay.
I started the state program. I didn't start it, I helped.
Right, but they wanted you to be
Yeah.
involved in it.
Yeah, and I was the secretary for the state program from 86 until 97,
Okay.
and my quadruple bypass interfered with that.
All right. Now back to the West Shore gas station robbery,
Oh,
where
yeah.
they had blew the fella,
Yeah.
shot him with shotgun.
Okay, so we had and to this day, toll-free number to call in, and
Uh-huh.
just we'd give the person anonymity,
Right.
and we give him a number, and any time he called afterwards, he'd give you the number.
Right.
He told us that, of course, we had newspaper publicity on this
Right.
particular case because it was terrible. He said, whatever his name was, it was, his nephew. His nephew asked to borrow the car, which was the car they used for the robbery. And he said, went out the next morning and I was looking over the car and I found this bloody money laying in the back seat. And I said, well, we determined who he had lent the car to,
Right.
and that mushroomed the investigation, and we cleared it up.
Well,
We
all
cleared
right.
it up.
So doesn't sound like a very smart criminal leaving bloody money in the back seat, but
No.
I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of not very
Oh,
smart
yeah,
criminals
yeah.
in your career.
Yes.
Slip up on some of the simplest things, don't they?
Yeah.
You're flying. President of the Carlisle Flying Club in the
Yes,
1970s?
which is I was one of the original members, and we
Okay,
started
founding.
in 1977 with 2 aircraft.
Okay. Now, is that still an active
It still is inactive. I am no longer in it. I retired out of it
Right.
after, I guess, about 20-some years, something like that. 77.
And that encompasses what? Well, that's all prop aircraft. That's not gliders or anything. is
No,
it?
no.
Okay. It's all prop. Any other community involvement besides your, the Crime Stoppers? And you said you were, was it a Rotarian you were, or
No, Exchange Club.
Exchange Club? Okay.
Yeah, I was involved in that, and still am involved in it.
Okay. Any other like American Legion or anything?
American
like that?
Legion, I'm a 60-plus year member of the American Legion. When I left, rather discharged from the Navy, I signed up with the local Milton American Legion.
Okay.
And that would have been 1946.
Okay.
And I've been a member ever since.
Any other civic organizations?
Masonic,
Okay, you're Mason.
I a 60-plus year member of the, yes. of the Masons,
Okay.
and I'm also a 32nd
Degree
Consistory,
Mason. Yeah.
and for Shrine. I'm no longer a member of the Shrine.
Okay. I'm curious. You spoke of your wife and you moving to Carlisle in 1976. What's your wife's name?
Pat.
Pat.
Patricia.
Patricia. When and where did you meet her?
Long, short story. I'll try to keep it short.
Oh, that's fine. We
Running
have
out of
all the
tape.
time.
I met her in Claysburg.
Okay.
We had, this other trooper and I had, well, her parents had a store. And the trooper that I was with, he loved to stop at the store and pick up some cold meat.
Okay.
And one day we asked my mother-in-law to be if she knew any girls around that we might take out
Right.
on a date. And she says, yeah, I have two school teachers right here in the house, they're staying in my house.
Right.
So we went out with this two school teachers. We went to a movie, and then we came back, and we were playing ping pong in the basement of their home. And pretty soon, some nice-looking girl skipped down the stairs, and I said, who's that? Well, that's Patsy Deckerhoff.
Right.
And at any rate, I called her up, and that was one of the best things that ever happened, because we've been married for 59 years.
I guess just skipping down the stairs and caught your eye, huh?
Yeah, caught my eye. Called her up. So that was,
Yeah.
and we had a boy and a girl. She said they don't make any other kind. That was it.
Okay.
And the boy is a commercial artist, and the girl, he's in Rochester, New York, and the girl is, she's a charge nurse at the Carlisle Hospital.
Oh, very good. So they're both successful, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you're very proud.
Yeah.
Any grandkids? Great grandkids?
Three
Grandkids.
Three kids.
Okay.
Oh, and get a load of this. My daughter-in-law,
Uh-huh.
Matt's wife,
Uh-huh.
Matthew, is a minister.
Okay.
She was right here, in fact, at the Lutheran Church. She was a member there, and then she went through the chairs for ministry,
Okay.
and she's been a minister now for quite some time.
Okay. Well, good for her.
Really
She's,
I'm not done.
oh, okay.
No. And the other granddaughter, they both graduated from Valparaiso University.
All right.
And while Becky was out there she met this student in her class, and she married him. And she was going through the chairs for the ministry. And she is now a pastor for the Faith Lutheran Church in there's a blank spot
Okay.
out by Chicago.
Okay. So you have two female ministers in the family.
So yeah, I'm not done.
All right. I'm not trying to rush you. I'm just
Okay.
trying to confirm. That's all.
Okay, so then, let's see, that's Megan. Megan is now, they're both married.
Mhm.
Oh, that keyed it. At any rate, Becky, now she's a minister and pastor, and she was dating and married a classmate. The classmate graduated in the same year, and needless to say, he had a degree in philosophy. Well, she was already in the ministry. Guess what he wanted to do? become a minister.
Really? Okay.
So Marcus Lorman, he's from Washington State. At any rate, they've been married now for about 5 years, something like that. And he is studying to complete. After 4 years at Valparaiso, he had to go another 3 years for ministry, which was 7.
Okay.
And now he is going a special program from the Chicago people, well, not the people, location of, there again, there's a blank spot.
Okay. So is that where Lutheran headquarters are pretty much?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
And Marcus, peach of a guy, we're having a funeral at the Lutheran Church on Friday. Becky and the other Megan, their great grandmother died.
Okay.
94 years old. Her name was Clapsaddle. But I guess I covered.
Well, Clapsaddle is a fairly common name in
Here,
this region.
Yeah, in this area.
And that's this Friday that you all are holding that. I wanted to ask you, again, going back to the family, what did your wife do? Did she work? Was she a
She was a
homemaker?
telephone operator until she married me.
Okay.
And I said, if I can't keep you, I'm not going to marry you.
All right.
Those were the days when the wife didn't work. The husband was the only breadwinner in the family.
Right. The wife tended the kids and tended home.
That's right.
And was literally a homemaker.
Right.
And so.
That's absolutely correct.
And how long did you date before she said yeah?
2 years.
2 years, and then finally.
2 years later, we had our first child.
There you go. So you wooed her with that state trooper's uniform?
Oh,
initially?
my. Oh, my. That's another story.
I think you guys were wearing high boots and Sam Brown belts back then, weren't you?
Well, it's Sam Brown belt, that's correct. And sometimes we wear boots if you didn't get caught doing it. In the meantime, in the interim, we had puttees.
Okay.
Puttees.
The wraps.
Yeah, the wrap.
Okay.
Yeah.
What occupies your time now? Besides family, which sounds like you have quite a family.
Well,
what do you find yourself doing?
I found myself, I've been a member of the YMCA since day one. I'm 8 years old.
Okay.
And I play racquetball, I work out, I swim.
Uh-huh.
But I did that all until about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And right now I'm doing nothing except go to church. Every location I was at, we were attending church.
Right.
I was with the another blank spot.
So you're active in the church, and you've been. Sounds to me from this interview and what we've discussed, you've always been an active, physical type of person.
Yes, sir.
I mean, when you talk scuba diving and working with weights and YMCA pretty much says it all, and flying and so forth. You've kept yourself in good health.
But now, after many years and all kinds of operations, the old body's starting to say no.
Starting to refuse.
Right. So I don't drive at night anymore.
Okay.
And very little daylight.
Okay.
But I have to be careful because I know if I fall, I got problems.
That is certainly a danger.
Yeah, balance is not good.
Certainly a danger.
Yeah.
In wrapping this up, and it's been a pure pleasure, how would you describe your years? How would you describe your life? How's it, family, state trooper, World War II,
as far as my life, the bucket list, I wanted to go to college. I wanted to become an aeronautical engineer. I didn't make that.
Okay.
But I went the second route, the one step below that.
Okay.
And my career was successful with the state police. All the time, all the stories, all the action. I've been shot at very close to. That was another story. But needless to say, it's been a success. It's been a success.
And what would you say was the highlight of your state police career? Capturing those two guys with the plane?
The highlight of my state police career. Oh, I put it all in line.
Okay.
Put it all in line. There was so much and spread over so long a period of time involved in every possible thing.
Well, it sounds like, the span that you served with them from 49 to 81, you probably saw a lot of changes. You saw a lot of
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
technology, automobiles.
I don't have that picture with me. I have a picture in my office. I'm standing in inspection of the troops, the major and I come across this female trooper.
Okay.
And first female trooper on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I was the CO of the Turnpike at the time.
Right.
And I'm looking over and coming down, and I stop at her belly, and I said, "Gain a little weight, aren't you, trooper?" "Yes, sir." And she whips up the gun, and I check and put it back. Earl Allman, the sergeant in charge of Everett Station, calls me after the troop drill.
Right.
And, "Captain, yeah, this Earl." I said, "How you doing, Earl?" "Pretty good." And he said, "You made a comment at the troop drill about Wendy." I said, "Yeah. She's 3 months pregnant." 3 months pregnant. The story's not over.
Okay.
So my car was 300. Every time I get on a turnpike, I go 300 to the barracks, 10-8, which is I'm in service. Well, the turnpike has a clothesline for single frequency.
Okay.
And anyway, I'm going out the turnpike. I never bothered anybody until they went so fast, actually. If they go 80, I would nail them. What I would do is I would check them and check the time and the distance and so forth. I'm following this guy, and I get a clock on him, or whatever, 80-something. So I saw 300 to the Everett Middle Patrol, 1020, that's the location. Wendy comes on, and I give her my 1020, my location, and she's up ahead.
Okay.
And phew, pass over. Wendy she's got to put the pedal to the metal because we're going down the road at 80-something miles an hour.
So you passed her.
I passed her.
Okay.
And pretty soon I said, 300 to the Middle Patrol, whatever it was, and I have a car number, 1020, and then she's a mile back. And finally she's got the pedal to the metal.
Yeah, she's hauling.
And I thought at that time, there's a female, pregnant, and running out the turnpike 100 and some miles an hour. I said, boy, that's bad. So at any rate,
Right.
finally she comes up alongside, pulls a guy over, and walks back, gives me a salute. "How you doing, Wendy?" "Pretty good." I said, "I thought you'd never catch me." And I give it. Then she went back up to the guy, and I always used to think when they would say, "Well, the captain checked your speed for whatever it was." "Who?" the
Right.
captain of the turnpike.
Right.
And at any rate, she come back and wrote him up and so forth. So I had a couple things like that.
Yeah. So she came through, pregnant or not. You got
Pregnant or
this young
not.
lady 3 months pregnant, and
Yep.
she was right, had your back, was right with you. Well, that's a wonderful story. Mr. Robbins, you have anything you'd like to say, again, in conclusion?
It's been I think my life has been very good.
Sounds like you've had quite a life, and quite an exciting one. A lot of those opportunities you made for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you took, as they say, carpe diem. You seized the day and went after. And sounds like you have a lovely wife. And I wish you wonderful times and much love and happiness with your family.
I like your methodology in interrogating.
All right, sir. Well,
Well,
it's been a privilege. And in closing, we've been interviewing Mr. Newton Robbins of Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And again, sir, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.